Hey, welcome to another Front-End Engineering Explained. So in today's, I want to talk about using JSON as a means to share information coming maybe from a server and then making it available to your client-side code. You might have heard of stuff like hydration, where, for example, you have some JavaScript, Node, React code that is executed on the server, but then you have hydration that happens, and generally that means attaching event listeners to DOM elements so that when they're interacted with, they will react. But some of the other things you can obviously also do at this point is maybe inject some information into the DOM that you could only have gotten from the server, but at that point in time you couldn't have injected it. Maybe your JavaScript can't be server-side rendered. This still happens. For example, on a project that I'm working on at Factorial, where I work, we use Drupal and PHP and Twig, and then we write a lot of client-side stuff using web components. So we oftentimes have stuff that is server-side rendered that we then need to make available to our client-side JavaScript code. For example, in this specific scenario, we have these labels for sorting elements. So it's basically a popover that shows some radio buttons, and depending on which one you choose, you're sorting a bunch of results based on date or name or whatever the case may be. But the labels for these could be in one of 7 potential languages. And so we use the string module, but this is replaced on the server by the actual text in either German or Italian or English or whatever the case may be. And so in the PHP, we create this object and we're storing it and sorting labels. And then further down, we add this script element here. But then critically, we add type equals application JSON. So the browser isn't going to try and do anything with this. It's not going to try and execute it like JavaScript or anything. It's kind of just going to ignore it and leave it be there in the DOM. And we're just giving it an ID here so that we have a way to get it. And then we take that sorting labels PHP object and we JSON encode it. So what we end up with is just a string. So it would look like something like this that you can see here. In this case, it's in English. As you can see, date ascending, date descending, but this could have been German, this could have been Italian, whatever the case may be. Then I'm also showing another example here where we have some information about maybe the currently logged in user. Now, be careful here. Remember that this is a string that is unencrypted, it's in the DOM, so don't put any sensitive information here and don't put any information here that could open you up to cross-site attacks. But for something like this, I mean, this is completely safe. There's no URLs. It could be rewritten to point somewhere else or anything like that. It's just some basic data about some labels for some form elements and then the user's name and their level. Now, okay, so we have this as a string in the DOM. Now, what do we do with it? Okay, so we're going to do 2 things here. The first thing is we have this little user card here. And then we have a template element here because we're going to use this template when you're going to populate it with that information that we're getting from the JSON, also making a sort of a call to an external service, but we're not getting the URL to the external service from that JSON. We already know that, so we just need to kind of fill in the missing details so we can make the appropriate request, and that details we're getting out of our JSON string. And then we're just going to create a user card using that information. And then also I'll show you, for example, how we have this field set with a bunch of those radio elements, and then how we set all their labels with these labels that we've gotten out. Okay, so I haven't written much. I'm using this dice bear, which is really cool, to get some avatars. And so you can see I just have a HTTP here, and I have this little level thingy in here, which we're going to replace with the actual level of the current user. So if you want more, dicebear.com, it's open source, really cool. I actually just found it today. Okay, so let's first, so if I go to the browser now, just have this little thingy there, and we have the field set with our radio buttons. Kind of looks like a browser, top of a browser window. I've added a little bit of CSS here at the top just to style our user card, but that is not the focus of this video. So let's dig in. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to do the user card first. So we want to get our user card. So we have a reference to that. So let's do const user card and then document dot query selector and then user card. Okay, so we have our user card now. What we also want is we want our user JSON. So we're going to get that const user JSON query selector again. This time it's an ID. So we have that. So we have the basic things, but we need one more thing, which is our template. So we're going to grab our template. So we'll say user card, and then we'll do TMPL, and then this one is an ID as well. Yes. Okay, so we have all the basic things that we need. Now we need to fill stuff in. So because we're going to be parsing JSON, we need to do this in a try catch, because if our JSON is malformed, it'll throw an error, and we probably want to handle that in some way. Of course, we're not going to look at what you will do right now. We'll just console error it out. But in a real world scenario, you might want to somehow use some message so a user knows something went wrong. Maybe you just want to hide the thing completely, but you probably also want to send off a message, again, like I've mentioned in other videos, to a service like Sentry or something like this, so you can log your errors, and probably not just log it to the console where anybody can pop up in the console and see all your errors. That is not a good idea. So we'll do a try, and then we'll do a catch. We'll just finish our catch right here. So for now, again, like I said, we'll just do console.error, error setting user data, and whatever our error message was. Okay, then first things first, if we couldn't get the user JSON, we have a problem. So if not user JSON, we're going to throw new error, and we're going to say could not get user JSON. Okay, but now we know we have our JSON, so we're in good shape. So first things first, we want to get that string out of it, and then we want to parse it. So we can do that in one line. So we're going to say let's just say const user, and it is JSON.parse, and then it is our user JSON.inner HTML. That gives us our string, and we're parsing that into a JSON parse. And if our JSON is well formed, like the one our JSON is right now, it's gonna user is now going to be a JavaScript object. And so now you can work with it like you would work with any JavaScript object that you maybe have written straight up in JavaScript. So that is the cool thing. That is the nice thing you can do here. So what do we want to do? First things first, we want to clone our template. So we want to clone that node. So we're going to say const user card clone equals, and then we're going to do user card template dot content dot clone node. And we pass in true because we want to clone everything, the node and all of its descendants. So now that we have the clone, we want to set some stuff. So the first thing we want to do is, what do we need? We need our image, we need our username, and our user level. So let's do those ones. So const image, and we can now query directly on a user card clone. User card clone dot query selector image, and then let's call it user avatar, and then username, user dash name, and then It's user level is user level. Right. And then we'll say, actually, I want to go up and give this image, I have it in empty alt. Okay, great. So we'll just leave that as being decorative. So what do we want to do? We want to set the source of our image. So let's do that first. And we're going to use this avatar service, but we just want to do a bit of a replacing this placeholder with the actual level that we've gotten from our JSON. So we'll say user avatar.source equals this dot replace, and we're going to match level, and we're going to use user dot level. Right, so that's going to set the source of our image. Then we want to set the text content of username and user level. So that is username dot text content. Also, don't enter HTML here, just to be safe, so that if somehow HTML snuck into your JSON there, you won't actually stick it into the DOM as HTML, but you'll just stick it in as text. And so if there's tags and things, it'll just be innocent text, and the person will see like, whoa, that looks weird. So text content is username, right? That's what it is. Yes. And then user level is level. And then now we have our card clone, but this is just a fragment at this point. Of course, we now want to append it to our user card, right? Which we do have, I believe. User card, indeed we do. So we want to say lastly, user card.append, and then our user card clone. Okay, let's have a look in our browser. Did it not execute? I must have done something wrong. Let's see what I did wrong. Error setting user data. Well, this is nice. We can see how that works, right? So we can see avatar service.replace. I made a typo there. So there we go, replace. There we go. So there is our little user card. And so this, we used our level to basically get our image. So for adventurers, they will get this kind of avatar, and we stuck in our name and we stuck in our level. Nice. Next. So the next thing we want to do, and we can do this in the same try catch, but I'm going to do it separately just for demonstration purposes. So again, what do we need? Well, we're going to need to get all our labels, and we're going to need to get this, our script element here. So let's do this here. So we're going to say sort by labels, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, let's call it JSON equals document dot query selector, and it's an ID of that. And then we want to get all our labels. So for now, we'll just document the query selector. Const labels equals document, but query selector all, because we want all of our labels, right? And something I forgot to mention, our for and ID here is doing double duty. So we're using our for and ID, of course, to associate our label with our input, so that for accessibility, we now have an accessible name for our input, but also the reason I wrote it like this instead of like a dash is because this now matches our key in our object. So we're going to take advantage of that when we're actually setting our labels. So now we have our script element that's actually just our JSON string, and we have all our labels. So, but now we want to start doing stuff. So now let's jump into a try catch again. I'm going to save some typing here. So let's jump in here. Error setting sorting labels. And again, let's first check that we actually got our JSON. So if not blah, throw new error. Oops, no sorting sorting labels. Okay, otherwise we know we're in good shape. Now, here's another thing. If you've watched some of my other videos, you might have picked up on this. If we're going to try and do this, labels.forEach, we're going to run into a problem because this is a node list. It's not a array, so we can't do forEach. Now, I believe this will actually work in Chrome, and perhaps we can test this. We will test this. But so let's test this, and if it blows, whether it works or not, I'll show you what you should do to make sure that it will work. Because I know there is this thing that's being discussed, and I believe Chrome has already implemented it, so Chromium, or it might actually just be Chrome in this case. But anyway, to say that to also treat array-like objects like an array. So NodeList is an array-like object. So yeah, let's have a look. So for each one, we're going to get the label. And now, as I mentioned, our little for attribute is going to do double duty. What we want to do is, first of all, for each label, we want to get the span element that's inside of it. So we'll do const label text equals label dot query selector. Wow, query selector, and then what we want is our span. And so with our span, so with our label text container thingy, we want to set its text content. And now we're going to use, well, we haven't even parsed our JSON yet. That is problematic. So let's do that first. Const sort by labels. Did I call it anything else? No, I didn't. So let's do that. JSON.parse. Sort by labels JSON.inner HTML. Okay, now we have our object. And so here we're going to go that, and we're going to use our square brackets, and we're going to do const key equals label dot get attribute for. And then in here we're going to use that as the key, and then put the value inside the label. And I think that's it. Let's see what Chrome says about that. Chrome says no. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's just see if there's an error first of all. There's no error there. Okay, we can refresh to make sure there's no error. So let's just make sure that I'm not overlooking something here. So we get our we get all our labels, and then we say if there was no JSON, then throw, so we're not throwing, then we say sort by labels, and that is JSON.parse, this guy's inner HTML, and then we loop over our labels, and for each label we get the for attribute, store that as the key, we query selector for a span, which is this, inside our label, and then we set the label text as text content to sort by labels key. Right. So we're not seeing an error, but we're also not seeing our output as we expected. So let's just do this. So to turn a node list into an array, we're going to do Array.from and pass in our node list. And we're still not seeing success here, so I am missing something. Now to debug, what are we missing? Let's have a look at sort by labels. So that is there. Date ascending, all of that is there. Let's have a wee look. Label, span. So we are getting our labels from our document. Let's debugger and see what we get. All right, let's do this. Let's see where this is going wrong. This is a nice one. I didn't plan this, so let's see what happens. Okay, so now we're going to do that. So what is the value here? It's our script. We can see there. So let's step over this one. So what is our labels? Our labels are empty. And now we see exactly what the problem is. It's a typo again because I typed labels instead of label. And of course, it's a label, not labels. And there's our bug. We found our bug. We can play through. We know what the problem is. We go back and we change labels to label. And there we go. And there's our labels now. And of course, they are associated properly. And that's it. So this is a nice, really nice way that you can use, you can get some information from the server that can't immediately be available to your JavaScript because your JavaScript's not being server-side rendered, or there's multiple reasons how you can end up in this, or you're just working for example, like I said, in an infrastructure where you're writing client-side JavaScript where everything's client-side, but you have stuff happening on the server like language strings, localized strings, and you need to expose this to your JavaScript somehow. This is one way of doing it. Also, maybe just giving basic user information on page load. So this saves you, for example, from making another fetch call to an API in order to get the current logged in user's information. You can dump some of this information into a string in the DOM, get it out, parse it into a JavaScript object, and then just use it. Use it like any other JavaScript object to populate stuff. Be careful, of course. As you saw, I use text content when I output stuff into the DOM. And also, as mentioned, don't put sensitive information in here because it's just text. It's not encrypted. It's in the DOM. People can inspect the DOM and find stuff. Also, be careful that you don't open yourself to cross-site scripting here. Know what the source of your data is. If the source of this data is user-generated, no, run the other direction. But if the information here is under your control and you feel that you can trust the origin of where this information is coming from, this is a really useful tool that you can use. And by the way, it's also super, super fast to parse a string to an object using JSON.parse is really fast. So these are tiny little strings, but there's some instances where we use not huge, but pretty big strings and parse them into objects, and never seen any performance problems. So have you used something like this? Do you use any alternative approaches to this? I would love to hear if this was new to you and you found that this might be useful to you in your day job or a side project. I'd love to hear about that. And as always, if you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate those. If you have any comments, as I just said, leave them in the comments. And if you want more content like this, please subscribe, and I will speak to you in the next one. Until then, keep making the web safe, awesome, and accessible. Peace.